Okay, let's go ahead and start out by creating a new document again. I'm going to use the shortcut, and that's Control in Windows, Command on a Mac, N. Get you there faster. And I am going to use my tried and true web standard 960 by 560. And again, you could use anything you want, doesn't matter, we're just playing around. Pick up your star tool right here and draw me a star. And don't forget we can use our up and down arrow keys, whatever we want to do here. Let's stop right about there before we get in trouble. And I am in the Essentials workspace, but I did reset it. So I'm going to click this button right here because I like to see my stuff. And let's go ahead and make sure we got the fill over here and just give it a color so it's not just sitting there looking at us. Okay, what are we going to do next? Well, I want to show you something. Pick up a tool we used in the previous lesson, and that's the variable width tool right here. And come over and begin doing this. Just kind of pulling these out. You get about in the center. And, well, let me see you. There we go. Sometimes it doesn't like to cooperate with me. It's always the computer's fault. I hope you know that. But I have found out something is when the system is not cooperating with me and I get really frustrated, I stop for a second, take a deep breath, and realize it's probably something I'm doing, and it's not because Illustrator has decided it doesn't want to work for me anymore. I'm just kind of pulling these things out. Now, it is still a stroke. It's a variable width stroke. So it's still confined to being used, well, as a stroke. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that we don't want it as a stroke. We want it as an object that we can fill. How would we go about that? Well, number one, let's go ahead and pick up our selection tool and select it. Now, go up to the word object on the pull-down menu. You have something called expand appearance. Now, what that would do is simply to separate the fill from the stroke, but the stroke would still be a stroke. If we go down to the word path and go to outline stroke, it actually creates it now as a fill. It is no longer a stroke. So let's do this. Let me pick up my move tool. Actually, I already have it selected. If I come over here, it's in a group. I'm going to go object on group. And there's the original, and here is this. Now, just to prove a point, if I come over here and select it, notice the stroke, it says there's no stroke. Well, that's no longer a stroke, that's fill. I can come over here and give it a color. I can then go to stroke and give it a stroke. And you've got a completely different object based on working with variable width on the stroke and then converting it. Now, there is another reason why you might want to do this. Earlier versions of Adobe Illustrator did not have the ability to do a variable width stroke. So we haven't gotten to saving yet, but let's say you are saving this for somebody, and I know people that are using all kinds of versions of Illustrator going back like 100 years. If they're using a version of Illustrator that doesn't support variable width strokes, and you're giving them something with a variable width stroke, there's going to be a problem unless you do this. Because right now it's just objects and fills and strokes. That's all it is. So we can convert strokes once we have played around with them into their very own objects.